back. First video of 2025, and I thought I'd take the chance for it to be a rambly one. You know, if my voice still sounds dry, it's because I just feel really burnt out recently. It's not like from videos or anything like that. It's part of why I'm doing this. Although before we get to that, to celebrate the new year, I've decided to bring some, I think it's wine, with me. This is some Pino. Obviously, I will toast to you, but only do partake if you are of drinking age. A happy New Year's to you all, and let's just fucking hope this one isn't as bad as last year. Especially for you Americans, I'm feeling for you, honestly. Um, Cheers. Oh god, it is sour as fuck. Oh god, that is sour as fuck. Anyway, so what is the topic of this video? I guess you could kind of call this a rant video, but I would explicitly like a rant. So, I've mentioned this a few times. I know some of you, I think about 4 or 5 of you, will know of sort of that I'm in the business of fanfiction, but most of you probably won't know. Well, I have an archive of our own account. I've been operating an archive of our own account roughly as long as I've been a YouTuber, I believe. So, quite a while. I've done a lot of stuff. I have over 100 stories. Though that gets a little bit complicated, but we'll get to that. I will, in the pinned comment and in the description, leave a link to my archive of our own so you can check it out for yourself. This video is an introduction of your demi on and yeah, for any of you coming from Archive of Our Own, I'll probably make a post about this. Hello, welcome to the YouTube. You people on Archive have heard of my YouTube channel a lot more than my YouTube viewers have heard of you. So, what kind of fanfic? Okay, let's start with it. Well, we have some examples of that I'm in the progress of. So this is kind of a behind the scenes look. So this is something I've been working on for probably like a month. As you can see, it's pretty long. I won't like read much of it to you. This isn't like an audio book. You'll probably all get pretty bored. So, I'd rather not, to be honest. But yeah, you can see it's pretty long. It's a Ben 10 X Powerpuff Girls crossover. Now, where did the idea for this come from? So, I'm guessing that some of you are here from the Vilgax Attacks videos, or at least know that I do them. I'm counting on some of you being Ben 10 fans here when I mentioned Kira the Artist and the Ink Tank were the inspiration behind this. Basically, on their side channel, the Rust Bucket, there's a series of live streams in which Kuro the Artist plays through games, mainly the Ben 10 games so far, and I was recently watching him go through Punch Time Explosion, and you start off with Ben, however the first stage is Ben in Chowder's world, and then the second stage is the Ben 10 universe. Now, in the Ben 10 stages, your first enemies for the sort of first half of that are the Powerpuff Girls, and after that you get to work with them. And I found that the Ben and Powerpuff Girls dialogue was interesting. I thought they sort of almost were similar enough as characters to work together. So that gave me the inspiration to do a crossover. Now, what is this crossover trying to be? Is this trying to be like pure fanfiction? Not really. Sure, there's a couple moments, spoiler alert, by the way, if you're actually excited to read this when it comes out. There's quite a few moments where, so, Ultimate Alien. This takes place roughly tail end of season 3, sometime after the Ben 10 Live episode, and before Albedo's final appearance. So tail end of season 3 of Ultimate Alien. This features an appearance from both Ben Wolf, and whilst not written yet, Wildvine is also going to appear. There's a lot of references as well. For example, there's a scene that hasn't been written yet that will have Heat Blast doing something similar to what he does in the second episode of Classic when he saves the people from the fire. And funnily enough, I envision that scene with like the bum 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 bum, but in like a sound font. So it's got some fanfiction elements, sure, but I'm trying to make this almost seem believable. How a crossover like this would have actually happened back in like 2012. Context-wise, the Powerpuff Girls was pretty much a dead franchise by this point outside of Time Explosion. The 90s series hadn't appeared yet, the reboot hadn't appeared yet, it had been a fucking long time before any of that. And because it's a tail end of UAF Season 3, I sort of imagined that the team working behind this would be a sort of skeleton crew of interns from UAF, whatever's left of the old Powerpuff Girls crew from the 90s show, and probably some of the Omniverse writers that weren't, like, directly next to Dwayne McDuffie. The ones that would be theoretically working on the scripting and stuff, but because this is so early into Omniverse's production, they probably hadn't started seriously doing scripts yet. So it's like a skeleton crew writing this, theoretically, and it's not like the generator rec where and over a lot of time. I imagine this is like a half an hour to 40-minute long, straight to TV special with reasonably low. That's sort of the topic. We have FNAF 3, as I've called it, which is the third installment of a running series that I've got going, which explores the Five Nights at Freddy's universe before the missing children's incident. This is intended to be as lore accurate and canonical as physically possible. There are a few things. For example, there's some points of contention where I've introduced things that, like, technically you couldn't disprove them, but, like, they're not backed by anything. One of these is sort of my own personal, I guess you'd call it a headcanon. If you watch the FNAF Iceberg video, then you'll know this already. For example, Gabriel, who will go on to haunt Freddy Fazbear, or Solera de Freddy Fazbear, or that guy. Or should I say girl? You see, there was this, I'll give you a basic rundown of the theory. Basically, in FNAF 1, Freddy hides, well-known fact, Freddy hides in the girl's bathroom. Freddy's laugh, the audio clip, is called Girl's Laugh, and I mean, even hearing it in the game, it is very clearly a young girl's laugh. In FNAF 2, I mean, sure, all of them got, like, a little bit of, like, femboy treatment, but TBH, you gotta admit, Freddy got a lot of femboy treatment, like, to the point where it seems almost beyond femboy treatment. Everybody makes a meme of, like, femboy Bonnie, but where's, but I feel like Freddy also got quite a lot of that. And the fact that Freddy is associated with the color purple, same as Bonnie is. Now, Bonnie is always possessing a lot more, like, feminine attributes, and purple, and if we're correlating the color purple to that, the fact that Shadow Freddy is also purple should, again, it's not like the best thought out theory, nor does it have the most evidence pointing towards it, but still, I think it's a neat theory. If you can't tell me, the theory is that Gabriel is trans. right? That Freddy hides in a girl's bathroom not because of like a law error, not because Freddy originally supposed to be a girl and later got retconned to being a boy. My theory is that Gabriel was a closeted trans girl in the 80s. William killed her because she was a trans girl in the 80s, and, yeah. So this follows like the formula of almost like a true crime thing, where I try and set up so that every single one of the missing children has a valid motivation for being killed. It's not just this random massacre, they are targeted killings in this universe. And I say this universe, but I believe these to be canonical. One thing I also do is make sure that William is a fucking evil bastard. I am so sick and tired of you fuckers trying to make William to be a more sympathetic villain. I'm just not having it. The guy is fucked up in the head, and he is going to be presented as such. Anyway, bit of a rant, bit of a tirade, even. So yeah, this is one of those. This is the third installment in that series. Yeah. So this is so every year I do these big crossover stories. Where basically I get a bunch of my characters, whether they're OCs or reinterpretations of pre-existing characters, and I just create a huge, massive MCU-style crossover with them all. These are like alternative, these aren't like the canonical characters. This isn't literally the MCU, where the characters will then remember these experiences. I do have something similar to that for a lot of my Pokemon stories, but we'll get to that. Maybe. Yeah, so that's the basic rundown, some stuff I'm doing right now. The juicy stuff. How about we get into a bit of and I am drinking from whiskey glass as well. I don't know if I'm drinking whiskey, I think it's wine. But yeah, thought that was a fun fact. But that's getting some juicy stuff, the backstory. So, oh, oh god, remind me to have a drink this shit again. Funnily enough, I was actually planning on my New Year's video originally being Haiiii Black Ice, and I was just gonna get drunk. I don't know what it was. I think it was gonna be like take a shot every time I like fuck up or something, or take a shot every time like I lose a division or make a fuck up, something like that. Never panned out because fuck that shit. Anyway, so let's get into the backstory a little bit. What is my archive? How long have I been writing for? So many. So originally, let's start with the archive. So originally, I started Archive of Our Own as a sort of pet project. It was never supposed to be anything serious. In fact, I never even intended for it to take off. It was never even a creative outlet for me to write things. It was a journal. You see, I started my Archive of Our Own, it was about, like October, September last year? And at that period, I was having a lot of troubles in college. Obviously, now I don't attend college or any education, but I was having a lot of troubles. I was staying awake most nights, etc. So I found, and I'd recently heard about this brand new thing, ChatGPT. I know, it seems like this has gone so far since then, but believe me, ChatGPT was like a big thing on September last, 2 years ago now. Technically, well, you know what I mean. 2023, September 2023, right? ChatGPT was like only just coming into the public sphere at that point, and I was obsessed with it. I got a little bit of an autistic hyperfixation on it. And I discovered a lot of these videos from, people who were just trying to be funny, getting ChatGPT to write stupid stories. And me being someone who had a backing in creative writing. So I did a lot of like extended education for creative writing at school. I've always had sort of a passion for it. And before that point, quite recently to that point, I had not only released a fan fiction before that point. If anybody can hunt this down, I've hunted it down a couple times. Feel free to go drop some cringy ass comments, because believe me, it's got a lot of grammar mistakes. Now I have a grammar checker I run my stories through, because you'll notice if you are taking the time to read this, haha, Oh yeah, I am. I'm bad at grammar, and I know that I'm bad at grammar. I just don't know how I'm bad at grammar, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So yeah, I started this sort of as a journal because I'd seen these people, and they always like just present the funny, ridiculous side, and I was like, speaking from like a writer, like not a professional writer, of course, but like a hobbyist writer's perspective. How far could I take this? Theoretically, with my knowledge of tenses and creative writing and all the education I've received in it, how far could I take this? How far could I strong arm ChatGPT into making a genuinely readable story? And that's where it started. And it continued like that for about 2.5 months. I was churning out videos daily. Videos? I was churning out stories daily, and I mean daily. They were just coming out and out and out, right? They just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. Sometimes I'd release like 3 stories in a day, right? I was mass producing this shit. It was like a content farm. Now, I never thought of it like that. My intent was never to deceive, right? I made it very upfront that I was using AI and that this was like a journal, etc. However, around November time, I started on what was my biggest undertaking, and it was the story because I was quite burnt out. Before that, I had written a novel, or at least attempted to. The novel never released, but I'd been writing 2 books. One was a novel, and one was a sort of giant collection of stories surrounding a prehistoric world. I'll talk about those in a different video, but I was quite burnt out from spending so long doing those. And ChatGPT was kind of a way for me to engage in writing in such a hyper casual, offhand way. But I got to it, so my first ever story was Pokemon School. It was never supposed to become a series, but it kind of did. And I'm glad that it did, because Pokemon School 4, the 4th installment, it's not actually called that, it's called like Tightening Friendships and Fiery Tribulations or some shit. I can't remember. But yeah. It was the biggest story, and so far I would say the best written story conceptually that I've ever done. It's got so many interweaving plot lines, so many brilliant character moments, unironically pretty good action scenes, etc. I won't get too much into the actual meat of the story because again, maybe a topic for another day. Um and yeah, and I just sort of and I got really into it. I was like figuring out all these plot lines, and I was thinking ahead, planning character arcs, fixing lore tidbits. I was doing a lot of work. I spent entire days just planning out. I think I may even still have somewhere some of the little diagrams I was making sure to choreograph fights out in very particular ways, etc., etc. Right, I put a lot of work into it. However, my vision was almost too ambitious for the AI to really do. So what ended up happening was I was getting really, really frustrated with the AI, ChatGPT, and I started sort of fighting with it to get what I wanted. This is then when I started just writing out the dialogue myself. If you read through some of my older stories, you'll notice that at points it feels plasticky, but then randomly the dialogue feels human and well written. Now the reason for that is because that's me. That's me writing the dialogue and telling ChatGPT specifically what I want it to say. And you can probably sense where this is going. So I was fighting a lot with that story, and I did the first crossover story, which was even more ambitious. I still don't think it turned out quite as well, simply because it was almost like intentionally overly ambitious. That was sort of part of the meme. But yeah, it was very ambitious. It was way too ambitious for ChatGPT to pull off. I had a sort of notes. I was taking real life notes of bullet points to just remember specific conversations and plot beats that were important to the story because I knew that ChatGPT didn't have enough memory to remember that. and I would have to remind her and constantly strong arm it. However, no matter what, ChatGPT just didn't make the story that I wanted it to be. At this point, my writer's creativity, I'd kind of gotten over my writer's block, I wasn't feeling as burnt out anymore, and I took it upon myself to spend, I think, nearly a month and a half rewriting this novel-sized AI slop into what is one of my best and in completed stories, easily my best completed story. I do think that after it's finished, Pokemon School 4 will prove itself to be the superior story, but yeah, so far that is 100% the best story. And that got me thinking. I was thinking, like, why am I doing this? And I started to feel guilty because some people genuinely believed that it was me writing these out by hand. That even though I'd made it explicit so many times I was using AI, it was like people were treating it. Maybe this was just my paranoia, but it felt like people were being misled or gaslighting themselves into thinking that maybe AI generated works was a meme, that maybe I was memeing, that, I was trying to write like an AI or something and then just occasionally surprising you with a good story. And I started thinking, morally, is what I'm doing right? And I realized I like writing stories. I like doing this. And I had a bit of a moral crisis, and this moral crisis lasted for a long time, until probably April, May time last year, which is when I decided that my resolution would be that this year, funnily enough, I would, the rest of that year would be about phasing AI out and slowly but surely introducing people to my writing style. Because I was really paranoid. This was the other part of my moral sort of thing. I was really paranoid that people were only there because of the sort of curiosity of it being AI, and someone trying to push AI to its limits. I was so paranoid about that, honestly. I was really, really paranoid. So I didn't, even though I really wanted to, and this was also when I was learning about a lot of the environmental stuff and a lot of the fact of how AI got its data, etc., etc. I was turning against AI, and I had sort of told myself, look, I can write. I love writing. This is something I love doing. It's an escape from how fucking depressed I am, from how fucked up I am psychologically. It's a way for me to just feel normal. Well, okay, normal's the wrong word, but it's a way for me to feel like I'm doing something, that I'm doing something productive. Sort of around the same time that I was coming to terms, ironically enough, with my gender and my sexuality. It was around the time I thought that I was non-binary, and that I sort of realized I was pansexual, asexual, and polyamorous. Um, I like to call it panamorous. I like to call it panamorous. I think that's catchy. And I was sort of thinking, like, yeah, and and I just snapped one day, right? Originally, this was supposed to be the year when I released my first ever truly handwritten, hand conceptualized work. But I just decided, you know what? I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. It was becoming to fight with the AI, to fight with myself, to have this constant moral crisis every time I input a command. So I just stopped. And ever since sort of probably what, like August time last year, I've been writing everything by hand. Actually, no, maybe September, October. I can't remember. But it's been pretty recent. However, I still was under the name of AI generated works because I didn't want to lose that branding. Apparently. However, recently I decided, you know what? I want to fix my legacy. I want to fix all these bad things I've done, right? Because I view the fact that I used to use AI as a permanent stain on my legacy. And I oftentimes find myself thinking, is anyone going to take me seriously anymore? Is anyone going to read one of my stories and think somebody put genuine passion and genuine effort into this? Or are they going to regard it as slop? Just AI slop or fanfiction slop? Am I ever gonna be regarded as above average? I don't think I'm the best fanfiction writer out there, but I'd like to say I'm above average. At least I can strive to have better standards than Harry Potter smart, or two underage girls sucking each other's trans dicks. You know, I feel like I can, and believe me, there is way worse out there. I have read worse fan fiction. I used to love reading the just absolute worst of Harry Potter fan fiction back in the day. And yes, that did include My Immortal. Um, yeah, so that's a story, right? That's where I stand now with my writing, and these are some of the projects I'm embarking on now. Oh God, I swear. Oh God, I really dislike clear wine, white wine. I much prefer red wine. Um, yeah. So do you know what? Do you know what? I feel like and I have a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff that I haven't even finished that I sort of started. Mentally taxing. Like yeah. So, but you know what? This is supposed to be a general sort of discussion introducing you. How about I talk about some of my series and therefore probably gonna end up talking about some of my unreleased stuff. So obviously Pokemon School, it's where it all began. It's excuse me for the pun, where the device did what it did. That's Ben 10 reference if you didn't get it. And so there's some fun stuff about the earlier bits. So how I had ChatGPT write these initially was, now I didn't figure out the memory thing until way later on. So originally I thought that theoretically if I just had ChatGPT write every single story as a sequel continuing on from the other one in the same conversation, that it would make it more coherent and easier to organize. How fucking wrong I was. How wrong I was. So a funny thing. So Pokemon School at its core was supposed to be a sort of anthology sitcom where I thought, why don't I do a Pokemon series set behind the scenes? You know those like normal trainers that you encounter every route. What are their lives like? What do they think? What do they feel? Do they do things differently? That sort of thing. It was focused on what if there was no like anime protagonist? What if it was just away from the main plot of the games and centered on just normal trainers going about their day? And that includes the fact that all the characters are aged up from your usual trainers. They're all roughly between the ages of 15 to 18. Most of the main characters all around 16. I think they're like 17, like close to 17 as of Pokemon School 4, but they started off at around age 16, I believe. And they've become some beloved characters. But, so the first story was quite generic. You have these two bullies, Lily and Ethan. Now, they're pretty one-dimensional until the fourth story, where by God do I drop some plot holes and one hell of a fucking redemption arc for them. But first and foremost, they were just sort of the bully characters. So the whole thing is like, for some reason, the school has a very Harry Potter sorting hat style. This might have been because I was rereading Harry Potter at the time. I think I was on Prisoner of Azkaban, I believe. And I just sort of stole that system because I really didn't know what to do. So the classes are divided into the three main types. You have the water type class, the fire type class, and the grass type class. Is there fundamentally really any difference between them? No. Are they anywhere near as homogenized as in Harry Potter? No. Is there really any reason to divide them like that? No. Does it still matter to the plot? Yes, because the first story and the second story, although this is dropped a lot in later stories, the first two stick very sort of strongly with the concept that Emily, the protagonist, is looked down upon for having a water-type Pokemon. She has a Piplup. However, she was for some reason sorted into the grass class. Because I guess you could say it's sort of an allegory for racism in a way, like, or just, being different, right? The odd one out from everyone else. She's ostracized by her classmates, and specifically the class bullies, Lily and Ethan, specifically pick on her. Because she's vulnerable, she's the new kid in school, etc. You know, interesting is her mother is actually a grass type trainer. She has, I believe, a Venusaur. And what's quite is their garden. They have this wonderful, wonderful garden. I don't think you even see the garden properly until like story 3 or even maybe story 4. But they have this wonderful garden where quite often, despite the fact that she is a water type trainer, especially because of her mother's like a grass type trainer, she ends up doing a lot of stuff to do with gardening, and she's very good at handling grass type Pokemon. Now, this is kind of one of the core conflicts of the series where Piplup is really, really disobedient. This isn't really fully put into focus until Pokemon School 4, but it's definitely a sort of concurrent thing. It definitely happens quite a few times. Not that Piplup is like disobedient in battles, more so Piplup is disobedient more in terms of just daily activities. Piplup is more kind of, you know what I mean, right? Piplup just kind of is a bit chaotic, and Emily just can't really seem to control that chaotic energy. I guess you could say like this is because she's more trained to be a grass type trainer than a water type trainer. She struggles to reach that Piplup as she would a grass type Pokemon. The kind of is in its premise, right, and really break this stuff. It's actually kind of giving credence to like, hey, why do gym leaders and most trainers tend to sort of keep to one particular type of Pokemon? And it's sort of, well, because you're like trained. And I'm sort of expanding a lot on the idea of what is a training school, what even goes on inside of a training school. And in this universe, right, they're trained with these types in mind. If you're a type trainer, you are trained to deal with fire types specifically. Their personalities, how to take care of them, all their special abilities and held items, etc. Right, you are taught specifically how to master handling one type of Pokemon. It would then theoretically take an extremely talented trainer to then multi-class into several types of Pokemon and get and control the game and tame them. It's not like a normal Pokemon School 4, despite being a water type trainer trained as a grass type trainer. Emily catches I believe it's a Pachirisu. I haven't read that far into the story for a while. So it might have been an Emolga, but I think it's a Pachirisu. Which is obviously an electric type, which is quite funny because, the story is set in Unova, by the way, but Unova sort of just before Black and White 1 takes place, so Team Plasma is, like, haphazardly mentioned a couple times, but they're, like, pretty small business still. They're nowhere near as widespread and big. They're just finding their legs, right? They're just walking out into the world and starting their movement at this point. The actual villain of the series isn't really revealed until Pokemon School 4. His name is Gavornix, and the lore behind him touches a lot on ancient Unova. Basically, he was I think it's like he's the last king before the dragons split apart, and he was like a tyrant, but he blames the people for the reason why all the ancient dragons split apart, because he was the one who was controlling them, right? He was keeping them together. However, the people in his mind betrayed him, but you know, he was a fucking cunt. So yeah, they killed him. They beheaded him. And yeah, that was kind of the end of that. However, he inhabits a book, Tom Riddle style, and essentially, like, so one thing that I do that's maybe a little bit fantastical, I still second guess the decision to do this even to this day, but I kind of decided to roll with it, which is have Gavornix because of, I can't even remember the explanation I give. I think it's something to do with, like, the book itself, right? Or, like, the fact that he was executed by Pokemon, or basically something allows him to get the literal abilities of Pokemon. You know, so he can use Pokemon attacks. He is a human Pokemon, right? That's sort of his special power. That's what makes him imposing. You know, like, and yeah. And he does return in, like, a human form. He gets restored by Emily in Pokemon School 4. You know, it's quite a creepy scene, to be honest. I like doing this, and, like, you know, child-friendly stories just add something, but it's, like, it's built up enough, and it's interraveled in enough with the story for it to make, you know, so that's Pokemon School. It's an important series of mine. The first story I ever did, the first series I ever did, probably has the best story. It's gonna be the first one I rewrite, so I'm gonna rewrite. So this is gonna be all of my old stories that I like, that I'm genuine about, which is mainly the ones that got turned into series. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite them by hand. I'm going to take that AI text and I am going to rewrite it word by word, line by line, until they are perfect, until they are just the way that I want them to be. And Pokemon School is probably going to be the first one I do that with. Barbie and Johto is another story of mine. So in Pokemon, I have my own sort of MCU. I call it the HPCU, the Hyperfixated Connected Pokemon Universe. So I have a lot of mainline sort of Pokemon series, right? The sort of main, I've done some spin-off stories, sure, and they are included. They are part of the. So how I count this is they are part of one, but they take place at different points and places in that timeline. For, there's a romance story. You know, my one and only romance series between sees Kiri and Alex. And now this has quite a funny thing. So I was quite big on DeviantArt at this point, and I love looking at fan art, specifically of Ben 10, but also of Pokemon. And you know, one thing I saw was femboy Pokemon trainers. And I had an idea, especially since Femboy Hooters was still a meme at this point. I think you can see where I'm going with this. I decided, what if I did a romance story, but it's between a femboy and a tomboy? So I named this. So I named the series Toms and Femmes, I believe, or that was just the first story. I can't really remember. Um, and yeah, that's the concept behind it, and it's a romance story set in Kanto. Again, taking the concept of, hey, what if we look behind? Right, so this is set in between Gen 1 and Gen 2. This takes place in the 3 years between them. they still talk about Red as if he's a legend. Other than that, not many elements from Red, Blue, and Yellow are really carried over. This takes place sort of behind that scenes, right? It's really going on what are the lives of the trainers that you fight like? What goes on when you're not battling these trainers? What are their lives like? How do they catch their Pokemon? What do they struggle with? What do they think? What are their relationships? This series likes to answer that. Having a relationship between Kiri the femboy and Alex the tomboy. Kiri is actually bisexual, canonically bisexual, really tall as well. I think canonically I put Kiri at around 6 foot tall, and canonically Alex is actually really, really short. Alex is like 4'11", I think. Maybe I think it was 4'10", actually. Alex is canonically. Alex is really, really short. Um, yeah, and Alex is quite strange because I don't know if anyone else has ever done this, but I sort of explore what toxic masculinity is like through the eyes of a tomboy. So Alex is someone who desperately wants to act tough and masculine and tomboyish. She desperately wants to be like a sort of Lara Croft badass tomboy. However, she's sort of taken her traits from the wrong people, you could say. Because she's inherited and portrays a lot of these more toxically masculine traits. And this is something that Kiri helps her deconstruct and get over. Kiri himself, however, the bisexual king that he is, well, why is he bisexual? Alex is a female and Alex is straight. Well, Kiri has an ex. Kiri has an ex-boyfriend. And despite the fact that this series is child-friendly, and it continues to be child-friendly even with this plot twist, so the plot twist has a very funny story behind it. So this was probably the one time when the AI came up with a genuinely cool idea. However, I genuinely didn't know if I could get away with this, because what it did, at least was imply that now originally I always planned for Kiri to have an ex-boyfriend. What I didn't plan for was for their relationship to be as tricky as it actually is. So what I did was what the AI did was sort of imply, so like I wanted to be just an all boyfriend gets jealous stuff and leaves him. So that was supposed to go. Now, what the AI does is like level of like fear in Kiri that doesn't even seem overblown. It's like a very human level of fear, and I loved it. And my mind immediately caught on to what the AI. Like, ChatGPT really just implied an entire like plot line about this boyfriend being like abusive in some way. And I just decided in story 3, do you know what? Let's go whole hog with that. So Kiri's ex-boyfriend is a guy named James. James is a deplorable, monstrous human being. James objectifies women. Is a predator. Definitely is not beating these sexual abuse allegations. Genuinely, 3, get to the end and see if you disagree with me. And yeah, but again, I'll link my Transfem Rights, that's the name of it, Archive Our Own, I'll link it in the description and the pinned comment down below. Anyway, so he not only verbally was very abusive and toxic, but was physically very abusive. You see, James embodies a lot of Alex in the way James is toxically masculine. He appears gentle and even a milliseconds for you people. Yes. So I can't even remember where we were. Let's just move on to a different series. Okay, so let's think a little bit more about something. Series is a discontinued series. So the concept behind it was basically, what if I did Gwen 10, but in the prime timeline? And the gimmick of the two-story series, which I am going to revive. That's kind of why I'm talking about it, to build up some hype. It's one of my oldest series, and I've been feeling quite passionate about it lately, so I thought, fuck it. I'm gonna rewrite the first two stories, and then I'm just gonna continue the series. So, yeah. So the gimmick of the series was basically, I think, like, they're both in their early 20s, and Azimuth just decides, do you know what, Ben needs a sidekick. So he decides to give an Omnitrix to Gwen. You know, basically as a sort of security measure, just in case Ben was to ever be injured or for some reason was to lose the Omnitrix or somehow die, then, you know, there would be Gwen to take up Ben's role in this possibility. And the gimmick of the series is Ben teaching Gwen how to use the Omnitrix, but Gwen being so used to using her mana and magical abilities that she just sort of sucks really badly at using the Omnitrix and keeps using her mana and stuff to deal with problems. It's more of a comical series. God, I had to take such a long break there. I've actually kind of forgotten. I've really lost my steam. How about I guess I could talk a little bit about some of my unreleased projects or like stuff I'm working on. So I have never done an MLP thing. I'm not really in the MLP fandom. I am not on any of the forums. I'm not even in the Equestria War official server, right? Equestria War is what first introduced me to the MLP universe. I've never watched the show. Everything I know about My Little Pony comes from Equestria War and my very good friend Haiiii. My great Finnish friend, she's appeared in many, many, many videos. And I decided, do you know what? This is something that I've become weirdly fixated on. I need to do a series about this. So I came up with the conception of an OC of mine named Love Flutter Big Heart. That's right, Love Flutter Big Heart. So what is the gimmick with Love Flutter Big Heart? Or should I say print? Oh, Heart is a non-binary pony. They and them. Who is an unironically underpowered OC. Like, genuinely, I made very good to make sure that people, or Mary Janes, or whatever the fuck it is, Mary Ken, is that what they call it? I don't fucking know. God, Ken is a gay idol. I might lick those titties. Anyway. Anyway. Love Flutter is a non-binary pony of mine. And, they are a prince. They are the Prince Manhattan, otherwise known as the gayest prince. You know, so the concept is basically I tried to find a middle ground between Equestria War and the normal MLP universe. I won't say too much, I won't break too much. However, there are some big changes. There are some things that carry over from Equestria War. For example, the like idea of Thestrals being a sort of second class citizen is carried over. However, it's expanded to also include in that. Um a lot of the like nations like Stalingrad, don't know if the Griffin Nation specifically, but I know the Changelings will definitely be sort of similar to how they are, a little bit more of like an organized government or organized dictatorship rather than just like the goofy cartoon villains that they are in the show. You know, now in this universe, the big difference with Equestria is a lot more conservative in this universe. And in fact, they are technically more democratic, but like they're democratic oligarchy, where really they're more dictatorial. Basically, they have like an upper court system where the kings and princes of all the different states in Equestria, well, like provinces and cities, major cities. So Philadelphia, Manhattan, Canterlot isn't included because Canterlot would just be Luna and Celestia. And Celestia is kind of like an enlightened centrist in this universe. Like, she herself is like, as I would say, is accurate to the show without watching it, but I would guess so, is like fairly socially progressive. However, she just kind of doesn't give enough of a shit, and she's very much in this mentality of like, well, people will decide things when they're ready to. And with this whole oligarchical system, power, the of a has been given to all these kings will pass down from generation to generation or trapped in that cycle because, well, the way the oligarchy works, there's no democratic process for the probably arguably more socially progressive class to really take a stand and make any big decisions. So, in these matters, it's only the already pre programmed socially concerned oligarchy of kings and princes that can, or not kings, sorry, of like kings and princes that can really decide anything. Technically democratic because they democratically decide on legislator. However, it's not really the power of the people version of democratic. And Love Flutter is kind of like the anti-prince, the anti-royal. It's not the or it's just socially, very socially progressive and just wants to, Love Flutter starts the series off as like this sort of playboy prince. Love Flutter is pansexual and polyamorous. So, yeah. Love Flutter's getting a lot of cunt and dick every single night. That's what all I'm saying. Live the Playboy life, but not, of course, over the journey and over the series. Love Flutter experience and is wanting all of my fuss and attention. And I realized, hey, that's very ambitious for a newcomer to the MLP fandom. I know these people are very, 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 very protective over their community. I know they're very passionate. So, I know that I need to hit the running. And maybe this is very brisk, so maybe it's gonna be seen as just another melodramatic EAW wannabe. Even if it's not. I may really badly because I'm summarizing, so I'm kind of rushing over with at this point. But yeah. So after that, quite recently, if you've been watching the community posts, you'd realize that yes, indeed, indubitably, I have been working on something else that is going to kind of be my flagship entry into the MLP fandom. A Ben 10X MLP crossover, which also kind of doubles as a Ben 10 AU with a custom Omnitrix and custom alien designs. Where I don't have a lot of it mapped out yet, but it's still subject to change, but so far Pinkie Pie is going to be the one who gets the Omnitrix. But Spyro, not originally it was going to be Rainbow Dash, but my friend Ehal warned me that my thinking that Rainbow Dash was kind of similar to like the egotistical, not caring about responsibility ness that young Ben had and portraying Rainbow in that way would like get me slaughtered by the fandom. So yeah, not gonna do that. Uh, I have some other plans for Rainbow. Um, my next idea was Fluttershy because I thought, hey, shy and anxious when getting the Omnitrix. And then, as she gets used to using the Omnitrix, it gives her confidence. Maybe she goes overboard and has to go on a character arc of learning, hey, maybe there's a limit to, how we use these powers. However, I was told that I would also get crucified for that plotline because of, it's out of character, that Fluttershy is too pure for that. So, yeah. Oh god, I'm out of battery. Okay, well, I guess that's a sign that I'm gonna have to leave this off. Yeah, as always, pinned in the description and in the pinned comment. Just, yeah, go do it, please, for my sake. I've been wanting to link my archive of our own on YouTube for a long time, but I've been too pussy to do it because I didn't want to get memed on. But you know what? Fuck it. If I get memed on and I get clowned on for being a fanfiction writer, so be it. I'm gonna keep writing them and I'm gonna get better. Fuck me. Bye!